So let's get started, even though we've already gotten started. And let me introduce myself. In addition to the folks who are joining on Zoom, we're streaming on LinkedIn Live. So I'll say hello to everyone. My name is Michael Goldberg. I'm our Executive Director for the Veale Institute for Entrepreneurship. On campus, I'm also an associate professor at the Weatherhead School of Management. And it is great to welcome my good friend and Veale Institute Entrepreneur in Residence, Susan Luria, to our Veale Skills Lab for today's workshop. I've known Susan almost the whole time since I moved back to Cleveland, and our girls, our schoolmates and classmates, and our families are friends, and we've worked together in the past in various things in Cleveland, and I'm thrilled that Susan joined our Entrepreneur in Residence folks, and she has a deep passion, particularly for working with students on our campus, and has been a guest lecturer in my class before. So Susan, thank you so much for doing this today. I know she's keen to make this as interactive as possible. So we're excited for those who are here on Zoom, and also if you're on LinkedIn Live, let us know either in the Zoom chat, raise your hand, or if you're on LinkedIn Live, just put a comment in the comments, you have a question for Susan, and Doug and I'll be monitoring the chat. So with that, Susan, let me turn it over to you.
All right, terrific. Thank you. And yeah, Michael and Doug, I am not on LinkedIn Live as we're speaking, so you moderate that, and I will also try to watch the chat down there. But you know, we had the intros of all of us who are on these screens first, and I'm thrilled that we actually had the opportunity to do that, because I must say I was a little, it's a little daunting to do something over Zoom and not really know who's with you, especially when you're talking about something about like building team, and you're doing this on a screen. So I put together some PowerPoints, but oh, terrific. Welcome, Bob. I put together a PowerPoint, and I'm going to use it, but hoping that we actually converse more than we look at the PowerPoint. All right, so I'm going to share my screen for a second. And all right, let's make sure I am. All right. All right, everyone can see it. So the plan is for us to do the intros and then really talk about building team here. And we've got a lot of people from different backgrounds, which is fantastic. So thank you for that. And just as a quick intro for me, Michael made an intro, but I've been out and about in the work business world for 30 years, which is unbelievable. It kind of give my age away, but and we have some logos of the places I've been, but you know, I've worked for large institutions, hospitals, startup firms, emerging ventures, public company, and consulting, going into both successful and Chapter 11 companies that needed to be restructured. So I've seen the good, I've seen the bad, and I've lived the startup world in both happy and not so happy ways. And through my affiliation with BioEnterprise and some other opportunities, I had the opportunity to, you know, help a number of early stage ventures in Northeast Ohio form. And actually, I will say, you know, one other piece is I'm also a partner in Cleveland Social Venture Partners, and I met Shilpa, who is on this group, through that when she was a student, and the two of us ended up working together and continuing our professional and relationship and friendship over 16 years or something even more than that now at this point. So, you know, you kind of collect people along the way, and that's a key part of building team here. So actual experience, everything I've done, you know, I think it's hard to, when you kind of say what you do for a living, my, you know, strength has been, we're trying to figure out where we're going to go, and we're going to get people where they need to go. So I can figure out how to make something happen. And I've been hired by various organizations to make things happen. And at the end of the day, it's really all about people. So just as a quick intro here, and then I am going to make you guys talk in a little bit here. The 10 reasons why 7 out of 10 businesses fail within 10 years. Can people, like come up with thoughts? Why do businesses fail?
Number one, they quit.
They stop trying?
Yeah, they stop trying. They just hurdle after hurdle after hurdle, and then, okay, I'm done.
Yeah, they get tired, huh? What else?
Poor product market fit.
Yep.
They're no longer relevant.
I would say like not believing in the vision of the company or the people you're working with as well.
Going with the theme, I would say not getting a strong team together.
Yep. There it is. Hang on one second. Speaking of team, I'm going to get rid of my dog.
She actually said, get rid of my dog.
Sorry, I feared that would happen. Oh my. Anyway, yeah, every single one of these pieces, every single reason why businesses potentially fail boils down to people. There's certainly things like the pandemic, but there are companies that are coming out of the pandemic stronger. There are restaurants that are surviving. And, you really start looking at every single one of these things, delivering real value, understanding your target audience, optimizing conversions from, you start a company and you give away a product, and have you figured out how to turn that into something that actually makes money? All of these things really come down to, do you have the right people? And at the end of the day, have you built the right team around you with both the skills and the personalities to make things happen? So one of the really quick intros, I was thinking, one of the entrepreneurs I'm working with right now is incredibly strong clinically, and she's one of the most gifted people with a clinical vision. And there are other areas that she finds really challenging. And there was a conversation I had with her one day where she was like, "Oh, I'm not good at this." And it's like, well, it's not that you're not good at this. You are actually one of the most brilliant clinical visionaries I have ever heard speak, and you bring tears to my eyes when you're talking about that. But there are other things that you don't know as much. So that's not that you're not good at that. It's just, you've got to understand where your competencies are, especially if you're leading your team, and then how you build from there. And I found this great article about, what different types of entrepreneurs there are. One of them is the innovator. And so, you think of a Steve Jobs type guy who's, developing something completely new. You're changing the way the world's working. You're creating the rules. And these people tend to be super passionate, super obsessive. The bad news is sometimes it doesn't work. There's a lot of money, there's a lot of resistance, and there's a long road to success. But when that happens, it's game changing. Then there's the hustler. I met somebody like this yesterday. I have somebody who said, okay, I started out mowing lawns, and then I'm selling things on eBay, and I'm selling more on eBay, and I'm trying to figure, and it's the person who's just willing to work hard or get their hands dirty, starting small. And this type of person is going to tend to outwork most people. They're going to have thick skin. They see, failure is just sort of, that's what you do. You just kind of keep working through it. Rejection's part of the process. And the cons are they're prone to burnout. They're prone to not necessarily recognizing when to bring in additional resources. And they might wear out their team members because, if they're the hustler and they're putting their head down constantly, that's not necessarily realistic for everybody around them. Then there's the imitator. And I worked with one of those for a number of years, and just absolutely brilliant, who took a component inside of a medical device and knew that he could make it better and built an entire company around it, sold that company, and then did it again even better and sold it a second time. And really just saying, there's a way to do something that's being done even better. And so in some ways, this person's a combo of an innovator and a hustler, because they're putting their head down and they're taking something, they're creating new ways around it, but it's refining a business idea instead of a completely game-changing new way of doing something. And your idea is always going to be compared to the original idea, but this is a very valid way to go as well. Then we have the researcher, somebody who's going to take the time to research and develop thoughts from all angles, data, facts. They're very well thought out, plan for contingencies, and they're not going to start something unless they really know their market, they really know what they're planning to do. And then the cons on this is this person's slow to move. They're going to be more risk averse because they've got so much data and they just want to get a little bit more data. And potentially then the business piece, where you need just a certain amount of information, and to make a decision, they stop themselves from being able to just make a decision and go with a little bit of gut as well. And then there's the buyer, which, potentially we'd all love to be, right? Somebody who's got the wealth accumulated and they're going to go buy a company, they're going to run it better. And buying an established business is less risky, although sometimes, you tend to overpay for those things. So in terms of building full team, it's know thyself, and then begin to build around yourself. If you're indeed looking to build your own venture. So if you know yourself, you're more likely to be able to identify your most pressing need and skill set, build your team, and then leverage resources. Your team doesn't necessarily, it's not defined by who's in it, who's directly employed by you. Your team is your broad team in your community. All right, so this is now we're going to talk again. For a startup, what are the critical functions that you need to have in a startup?
How about customer validation?
Yep, market, sales, right? You need to know where you're going with it.
Yeah, and your competitors.
Yep.
Sales, and sales.
But what if your product stinks?
Doesn't matter as long as you're selling it.
Good point.
Could be. And you can't really sell unless on the financial side, are you pricing it right? And are you, is your cost of building the product higher than actually, what you're selling it for? And is this sustainable on a long-term basis, right? So you can look at all these books and there are a lot of articles saying, okay, here's your team, right? This is what you need to build. You have to have somebody in charge of each of these things. And what's really interesting as you think about, what you really need. Nobody writes HR as your number one thing, right? But you have to be able to find the right people. Because if you find somebody and you think that person can sell and they really can't sell, that's kind of a problem, right? So, in addition to the functions, there are the attributes of team members in startups. Any thoughts on what personality traits people need to have in a startup versus any other sort of general position?
I'd say vision is very important, whether that's social innovation or a for-profit company.
Yep.
But they should share your vision and your passion too. Because if their vision is at odds with yours, then that won't necessarily work.
I think your drive, the ability to be self-motivated and to kind of take ownership over the company as if it's part yours. Because if you're a team member in a startup, then you're almost taking ownership of that company, with the owner.
That's a really great point. How do you get that person, by the way? How do you get somebody to take ownership?
Speaking to the piece about having them feel like it's part theirs, I would say, speaking to people and seeing if your idea resonates with them, having that resonance with that person, and being able to kind of speak on the same level. And, somebody, I think it was Judith pointed out, the fact that somebody would have to have a vision that matches, with the organization. So I think, with that startup, finding people whose common, whose common pursuances or what their perseverance is, leading towards, that has to be common, in common.
If you're in very early funding stages, which I am, you could offer them part of your business in lieu of pay. And if they accept that, then they probably do share your vision and your passion. And because they're not just looking to get paid.
Yep, they're taking some level of risk, right? And they're putting their sweat equity into it. Yeah, this is great. I mean, it's just interesting over the years. You think of the people who say, okay, yeah, I want to go into an entrepreneurial situation and, a really small team, and every single person is really critical on that team. And so, yeah, you've got to have the vision and the chemistry so that the team comes together. The person's got to be motivated internally. They've got to be deeply committed to it. And a really interesting part of this is, sort of emerging venture versus large company, the degree of flexibility and ability to accept ambiguity are really, I think, two key attributes for the smaller team versus the larger organization. There was one of the MBA coaches. I don't know all the coaches Michael Goldberg would, but he said, hey, look, when we have to reduce the size of the team and who we're traveling with the team, we travel with the people who are who have the ability to play multiple roles, right? And in a startup or in a small team where you've got limited funding, somebody who's flexible on that and can roll with it is really, really critical, as opposed to in a larger organization where there's more defined job roles and descriptions. But you guys are right. I mean, the passion and the vision are absolutely critical. So here you have it. Now, here's the one that I really wanted to get you guys, let's talk about. How do you actually find people? Because I think that's why we wanted to be here. One of the things I did with an MBA class, not a Weatherhead class, I did it at another school, but it was a class that had been together for 3 or 4 months already, a couple times a week. And I asked all of them to write down on a piece of paper the name of at least 10 of their classmates in the room and a couple of things that they knew about the people in the room. And nobody could do it. I mean, it was really interesting. And I was thinking, okay, these are business students and maybe it's hard to do that, but, just as a general thought of when you come into a situation, how do you meet people, who's around you, and just the complete awareness and sort of cataloging of who are people, what are they about, how do they know? Who impresses you? And what can you, how do you meet them? So Michael, I don't know if you're still there or not, because I'm seeing, but I was going to use Mr.
But enjoying this.
Yeah, now you're here. So Michael Goldberg, I actually use as an example of somebody who is the absolute one of the best people I've ever met at this skill of just meeting people. Were you always like that?
Probably. I probably was. It's funny, like I was thinking about your question and the tools that we have access to today that we didn't when we were starting our careers. And, a tool like LinkedIn, I mean, actually, Doug and I were just connecting with an alum who works at Salesforce out in San Francisco right before this event. And, LinkedIn and Google, but LinkedIn in particular, just given the theme of team, presenting kind of in a very short snippet, what someone has done in their career. And I think B, what's super interesting, and I think maybe speaks to Susan, some of the things you're talking about is this sort of interconnectivity, just in a very quick way, seeing the mutual connections that I had between this alum of the university. And, I think what's fascinating about networks and LinkedIn or Facebook or even Twitter are sort of, platform manifestations of these networks where it's like you start to see, I mean, how many of you have been on Facebook where, my birthday was last week and like someone wished happy birthday, and then there's someone underneath someone's birthday comment, they're like, how do you know that person? So, we build these networks for those of us that have been out for a while, kind of throughout our career. And I think one of the interesting challenges, and I mentioned Susan is one of our new entrepreneurs in residence, and Susan saw this in action yesterday. One of the things that I often enjoy doing, whether it's getting friends to be guest speakers on things or in classroom, but this new program, we all collect friends and talent, and then you look to see in a way what way you can deploy them on things that you're doing. And frankly, and Susan and I were talking about yesterday, like this meeting that Doug and I held yesterday with our EARs and people, like it was kind of a mess. It's a new program. It's entrepreneurial. We were asking people to engage on things. They didn't have all the information. And I do think that particularly as you build teams, particularly in the early stage, like things are going to be messy. And a lot of the credibility that we have in our networks and bringing people in is like, how do you share and expose your talent and your networks to things that you're working on and do it in a way that they can add value? Because that's not always very easy to do. So hopefully some of that was relevant, Susan.
Yeah, no, I think that was fantastic. And who is it? Warren, is it Warren Buffett who said, you spend 20 years building a reputation you can kill it in 5 minutes. I'm sure I didn't quote it correctly, but you build up these friendships and relationships and professional connections over a period of time. And it's so interesting, as I look at some of you who are really early in your careers, and there was somebody that I met with as a mentor, and she was 80 years old, and this woman is just brilliant. And she said, you're going to look at all these things that you do, and you're going to wonder why you did it. And it's not really going to have made sense. But when you're 80 years old and you're sitting where I'm sitting, it's all relevant and it all matters. And there are relationships and people that you meet along the way that come back 10 or 15 years later and connect, and in a good way and in a bad way. I mean, it was really interesting. There was a guy who on a team that I was on in 1994 who was literally one of the most divisive human beings I had ever encountered inside of a corporate group. I mean, just a really divisive guy, like terrific on the front end, but behind the scenes was just really rough. And then he pops up so it was 1994. Then he pops up as an applicant for a senior position, in a company that is run by a friend of mine. And my friend said, "Oh, this guy's on your LinkedIn network. What do you know about him?" And what do you say? Like, yes, people have the opportunity to change and think about that, but that was 1994. I mean, it was, it's interesting. It's a small world. So when I think about, teams that haven't worked, and some of the people, there's probably been, out of 30 years, 3 really notable people where I thought, wow, they were fantastic. And and they had senior level positions inside of teams that I was on, and they ended up being very detrimental to the groups. I thought, how could I have known that? Because I knew these people, you reference check, you do what you can do, and then you bring them in and something goes dramatically wrong. And one of the things, sort of the constant in those of, okay, what's the learning, and is there a way that we could have avoided those decisions? It comes down to those people had no history, right? And so their history was, if they were in schools in multiple institutions, they didn't carry forward relationships from institutions, jobs, et cetera. And yes, there's always room for newcomers, but do people have an ability to form a relationship, and is that relationship lasting? Does it last more than a year? Because if you've got somebody and you're looking for stability and you're looking for a partner of somebody that you're going to go into a really stressful situation with, you want to know that person's got some personal qualities where those relationships are important. They've got, professional connections that carry them from one place to the next. And so, what's their ability and track record in terms of maintaining relationships, and however you can get to that as you're getting to know people. If I could just say one thing, it's looking at that and just getting people's, as they talk about other people and experiences, what's their level of positivity and professionalism as they're talking about those people. I mean, there's another, person I was thinking about where that person was very divisive. And I said, look, whatever he's saying about me to you, he's saying about you to me. And so it's just recognizing that in our own behavior and in recognizing who you want to partner with, particularly in a team that's going to be small, where every single relationship counts. And then looking around in the literature, people say hire slow, fire fast. Maybe that's true, maybe it's not, but it's really, get to know who you're partnering with pretty carefully before, if you're really going to go into a serious partnership and venture with them. And to this point, the fires will happen, particularly in startups. And so there's, sort of the categorization of relationships. Is somebody going to run in to pull you out? And every team, who they're going to, somebody who's going to run through walls to save that team. And then, the solo players that can, they're going to, sort of cat-like get themselves out of the situation. And maybe if you're in the way, they'll grab you and pull you out. And then there's the people where, if they've got to toss you, they might toss you in front of whatever. I mean, so looking at, again, partnership, building relationships, have a sense of that person's team mentality. And then there was a great article in Stanford Business Insights that said, have you had a fight with, do you fight yet? Do you know how this person's going to react when things get ugly? And if you're really building a business, things do get ugly. And so you got to stick together on that. This is, just general, managing your team, how you bring people into your shared vision. In general, people want to be part of something and know their impact, and so you're not just hiring, but people leave managers, not companies, and they're really going for opportunities. I think I'm going to actually stop with the PowerPoint though, and I'm going to get people to talk in a minute because I've just got a couple more slides, and because I put the slides together, we have to talk about them. But back to the relationship of how you bring people in a partnership. A lot of people don't want to give a piece of equity or something, and a percentage of something big is worth more than 100% of nothing. So it's really bringing people in beside you, with you, on that. I want to see who all. So back to, structure of working with people. There are ways to build your team with short-term consulting type relationships, longer-term consulting, equity, employee. And it's completely dependent upon resources, needs, timing. And that's really, some of you have experience with this, some of you don't, but you just sort of say, how do I build a team if I really don't have a lot of money? It completely depends on your resources and your needs and your timing. It's hard to talk to this because everybody's at a different stage. But there is, if you go onto Google, you can look up a variety of situations with this, but in general, these are the different categories. This is one of my favorite quotes. But now, one of the things I wanted to talk about too was not just people, but leveraging what's out there in the community and the support resources that people have available to them. And Bob Sobko, are you on this?
Yes.
All right, awesome. All right, can I put you on the spot and have you talk a little bit about LaunchNet as one potential resource for those affiliated with CASE who are looking at creating something?
Absolutely. So Bob Sopko and run LaunchNet. There's a LaunchNet at CASE, Lorraine County Community College, Baldwin Wallace, Kent State, and maybe about a year, John Carroll University, funded by the Burton D. Morgan Foundation. We help students and alumni of each of the respective universities with their business ideas. A lot of nascent ideas that, just starting off, a lot of hand holding, and what we do is we try not to judge the idea, but we try to encourage the entrepreneur to come up with the reason to either, go forward as is, pivot, or, maybe give up the idea, because collectively we've come up saying, this is a lot tougher than, we thought it was. And this is going to be just too difficult. And then we plug them into, you had that nice slide of, other people in the category, and we can plug them into Jumpstart or into Magnet and, other resources in the area.
That's fantastic. Thank you. And I know CASE as an institution has so many different resources for people to plug into, and it's not always completely clear where the front door is, but if you go to any door, people can get you to the right door and the right connection on this. And Shilpa, I'm going to put you on the spot for those interested in social impact work. You've been involved with Cleveland Social Venture Partners for 20 years now. And I will just say, as an example of somebody, Shilpa came to Social Venture Partners as an intern when she was a master's student at Case. And the thing that I noticed about Shilpa was she was quiet and just such a study of people. And our relationship and friendship just blossomed because I pulled her aside and said, okay, what are you thinking? And literally she had observations and perceptions on people that nobody else had picked up about what was going on in the room, how it's connected, et cetera. And I just thought that was just a remarkable skill. And so, I'm just, and the whole piece about connecting with people, it's not always an obvious, the LinkedIn and all of the outward stuff. The inward ability to watch what's going on in the room and connect things is just, that's an incredible skill. And Ms. Shilpa's got it. So there's your plug on you, but talk about Social Venture Partners.
Well, thank you. I did not know I had that skill till you told me. Now I leverage it all the time. And I am now not shy about saying, look, my gut says we're going in the wrong direction. We got to pull things back. And men, teams listen, and they don't just foo-foo me away because I'm a woman who's saying my gut says, blah, blah. So thank you for giving me the confidence to recognize the skill and implement it. Social Venture Partners, most of you, if you know nonprofits, you know that funding comes to nonprofits mostly for the programs that they do. It's feeding the hungry, clothing the poor, plus, right? Education, economic development, etc. The part that doesn't always get funded as much is building the capacity of the organization, investing in the infrastructure of the organization, investing in development tools, investing in board leadership, investing in executive coaching, etc., for the nonprofit leaders. And the work that these nonprofits do is just so incredibly difficult because they're trying to solve social ills and deficits that we've had for centuries, and they're trying to solve it with the least amount of resources. So that's where organizations like Social Venture Partners steps in to say, our money and the skills of the partners that are part of the Social Venture Partners is all dedicated to strengthening the capacity, the organizational capacity of the nonprofit organizations. So the pooled funds, it's like a venture fund, but for nonprofits. The pooled fund goes towards capacity building needs of the organization, and more importantly, the talent of all the partners. And there are, I think, about 50 to 60 partners in the Cleveland chapter of Social Venture Partners. All the capabilities, the capacities on marketing and board development and executive coaching and plus, all get directed towards helping the executive director strengthen the organization so that they can do the programming better. So I'll stop there.
Thank you for that. And the neat thing about that model is it's bringing together, a lot of people who are looking to help and who have varied skill sets. And Social Venture Partners in Cleveland is part of an international network of social venture partners. It was actually started out on the West Coast. And the reason why I'm plugging it is it's one resource for and it's one model for people to plug into to build their skills and their and get their hands dirty a little bit in terms of supporting nonprofits potentially on a short-term basis, and learning some skills and being part of a team to shadow and not necessarily be responsible for outcomes as you're building your skills and your experience. And also just being around a bunch of really sharp people who've had a variety of things in their backgrounds. And so it's just this overall awareness of, as you're thinking about what you want to do, your team is not only the people like right in your world, but it's, and working with you as an employer, as a consultant, it's what are the other resources that you can dive into. Michael, Doug, do you guys want to talk at all about Veale, or do you think everybody on this call is familiar with the resources available from Veale and support?
Sure, I can make a couple of quick comments, and we do have some regular program folks, although some new folks as well. So yeah, we're here as a kind of helping support and partnership with Bob Sopko and the team at LaunchNet that really is sort of our lead point of contact for students and alums that have business ideas and startup ideas. We work with our faculty. And a lot of what we do is just trying to connect the dots, because as you alluded to, Susan, earlier, sometimes universities or communities can have many doors and can be complicated. And so we're a relatively new resource on campus, trying to help folks navigate and a little bit better.
All right, fantastic. All right, I'd love to hear from others. Questions, questions, thoughts, anything you want to talk about? Emily.
Yeah, thank you for speaking with us today. I guess one question I have is, I find it easy to look at other people and say, okay, they're a hustler, this is their strength. But how do you recommend people discover their own strengths or market themselves?
That's a great question. And, it's really funny. You know it deep down. You just are probably thinking you have a right answer somewhere. And you're, so the things that you gravitate toward naturally that feel more comfortable for you is where you're going. That's the style that you're going to gravitate to. And I don't know why this took me a good 20 plus years to figure out that, because I kept wondering, I personally love, I love building the team, building the business plan and figuring out what something needs to look like. But that next stage of taking it, and living through the slog, that's not my deal. So I have this career of like 3 to 4 year stints. And now 30 years in, I was like, oh gosh, I start to really look flaky. But then once I realized, like, that's who I am, right? That's who I am. I get super passionate. I love it. That's my sweet spot. I can do it, but I have to get comfortable with that and just, and really celebrate that instead of saying, okay, I need to overcome that, right? And so there's stuff where you, in your stage of life, you probably already know, and you will continue to have things that come really easily to you and things that are harder for you. And maybe the stuff that is harder for you is more interesting and you can tackle that. But you don't have to. And that's probably not the answer you want, but you probably were listening to those profiles and you probably have a gut of which personality you're more likely to be. There's stuff, there is stuff that's distinctly more easy for you than others. Somebody else was about to say something.
I had a quick reaction to Emily's question as well. So I struggled with this a whole lot. And in the end, we had like this group of 15 girlfriends, people who'd known me for the last 10, 15 years. And we had a facilitator come in and present on these various personality types. And I still didn't figure out what I was. And then in the end, I just said, all right, you guys tell me. And they all immediately said, you're X. And that was very helpful for me too, because I was debating between X and Y. And it just became very helpful to have that external feedback come in to inform what I definitely was.
Yep. Other people can see it pretty clearly and you know it in your gut, but a lot of times you're scared to say it or acknowledge it, or there's some sort of fuzzy definition or something. Sue, you were about to say something.
I just had another question.
Mhm.
Well, first I want to say thank you for presenting today. I've learned a lot of really good information, and also for the social venture partners. So I'm looking at trying to start a nonprofit, and I'm on the internet, and they do have one of those in the town I live in. So I'm grateful for that reference. But I wanted to ask about LaunchNet. So I am an alumni, but I don't live in Cleveland. So is that a service that's available to anybody, or do they have to be in Northeast Ohio?
Yep. Anybody.
Okay.
Absolutely. So please reach out. I'll put my contact information here.
Oh, thank you so much. Okay.
I'd be glad to help you. We help, mission-driven organizations too. And depending on your category, look forward to talking to you.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Ismir, you're on mute. I'd love to put you, do you have any thoughts? Anything to add? Questions?
Yeah, actually, I do have a question. It's benefit if you guys have any other, I don't know, experience. So now you build a team, right? So I think the building of the team and having a good process of hiring and setting out and so forth, that's all good. When I was in school, research said that the average employee is kind of sticking around 2 years in the workspace, right? So they get hired, we hire them, we train them, we build them as people, and then they leave. What's happening? What are some advices that you guys have, or what's the industry looking like?
So your question, just because you were a little bit fuzzy on this, I want to make sure I understand it. So your experience is that you're hiring people right out, and you're spending a couple of years, and then they jump on you.
Sorry about that. I was on Bluetooth. I was driving now, and I have stopped.
But was that your question? How, what's happening and why are people jumping out?
Yeah. So the question really is, let's say we have this process, right? So this is what happened with us. We're hiring really qualified, good people, and then somehow some of them are kind of leaving, and there's no particular reason on I don't like what I'm doing or so forth. It's just that opportunities pop up, right? So you get Google getting your employee.
Right.
Obviously, you're a startup. You can compete. That's actually the other question. Do you compete with Google with their compensation? Google is like, I'm gonna pay 10 years even after you die. It's like all of these crazy perks that they have built. What is that retention policy that you guys recommend for startups? That's such a great question. And it completely, it depends on the people, the situation, et cetera. So there is some theory with certain positions. You have to acknowledge that you're going to have turnover, and that's not necessarily a terrible thing. And so you recognize, that you're going to get somebody great for a couple of years, and then they're potentially going to jump to something else, but you keep a relationship with that person, and they end up being a really great strategic partner to you down the road. So no matter what happens when people leave, I'll tell you, when people leave, it's really interesting 10 years later whether they come back into your life or not. Even if, by the way, you have a terrible experience with that person, don't be a jerk when they leave. I promise you that. But yeah, as long as are you doing interviews, exit interviews, and having a sense, or are they just saying, is it money, is it opportunity? Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we're having them, and this has happened with a couple of our guys. It was just we started this team a couple of years ago, and we had a couple of guys, and we're having a discussion with one of the ladies right now, and kind of I think it's a combination. They are being offered you can't really offer a leadership position if you're a small startup. If you have a team of 10 people and somebody at a larger company is offering them a team of 20 people to manage.
Right.
Now, and the reason why they are where they are with us, for example, is because we saw that potential that tomorrow they can actually lead that team. So it was intentional on our end to hire them now.
Right.
They can build that team. And now that opportunity, you kind of can't match that one, right? So you're like, yeah, you're going to have it, but you can't have it right now. You got to build.
Right. And it's mission, passion, and equity, and connection with these people to make them tied in. And, you know, I'm getting the flags that it's 3:55 and we have a hard stop at 4. So I'm going to get in trouble if I talk too long on this one. But it's so interesting because one of the things that a large organization I was working with wanted to do to address turnover was they said, oh, you should have stay interviews with every single one of your employees and make sure, and here's questions that you should have with everybody on your team. And you should know that and sit down and have a stay interview. Like, where do they want to go? What do they want to do? What's going on in their life? You know, and I looked at the information on the stay interview and I thought, gosh, if you don't know that about people on your team already, wow, you probably shouldn't be in the role you're in, right? So it's just knowing what's going on with people. And there are going to be people that you're going to, you know, the high flyer talent that's going to, you know, they're going to get pulled to a Google or something like that. You're probably going to have to overpay them, over equity them or whatever, over incent them. But also people are more likely to stay if they feel like they have true team connectivity. And a lot of times there's a lot going on behind the scenes that you're not aware of. So it just depends on how close you are. And I know I'm getting the like hairy eyeball from Michael Goldberg on, you know, timing, right? Unfortunately, I don't think I can do another question.
One more quick answer.
Okay. Well, I don't know. I mean, I have a question here saying, would love thoughts on managing team upwards, teams that are more fluid and unstructured. I would say if there's one piece of advice, it's making sure that you know where you're going on the unstructured team. So what's the end goal that you're trying to do? As long as people know where they're headed, they're more likely to partner with other, you know, they're more likely to all go in the same direction if they know, you know, where they're supposed to go in the first place. So the fluidity of, you know, whose roles are what, if they're working together and communicating really well, that can work. Otherwise, you're going to have to put more structure around it. But you've got to make sure that the goals and the measurables of where you're going is really clearly defined, and so that everybody can wake up in the morning and say, I'm here to do X. So every single role knows they're going to go. You know, they're all going to that same spot. Now we're at 3:57. So I think this
was a good succinct answer. I want to first of all, let me thank everybody for joining here on Zoom and on LinkedIn Live. Some old friends of mine and Susan, students, some new folks joining, Sue and Judy and others. Hope we see you and Ismail, hopefully see you at some future events.